Hello everyone, welcome to my Sekiro review video. As always, this review will have spoilers. If you're looking for a spoiler-free review, this is not it. I'll start with a short description of the game, followed by the pros, neutrals, and cons as I see them, and followed, of course, by the final score. Sekiro is a game where you play as Sekiro, also known as Wolf, a shinobi who was rescued as a child from a battlefield. He is beholden to follow his master's will, Kuro, the divine heir. In the beginning of the game, Kuro is kidnapped by Genichiro Ashina, and Wolf gets him back. Now, Kuro, the divine heir, is special in the sense that his blood can bring people back from the dead. Or more accurately, it can give them eternal life in that they die and are then resurrected. Wolf, being his shinobi, shares in this power because Kuro wants him to. So that is the origin of the resurrection mechanic in Sekiro. Now, the name of the game, Shadows Die Twice, is because after you die once, you can be resurrected immediately, or choose to go back to a shrine. Now, once you rescue Kuro, you will then hear his plan, because he intends to free the world from the curse of resurrection, as he perceives it to be. You can then, well, you are then forced to go along with his plan, although there are slight modifications you can make to make sure that he stays alive and doesn't die as a result of his plan. Let's start with the pros. Now, Sekiro is not a traditional Souls-like. In fact, many people would argue that it's not Souls-like to begin with. It shares some similarities with other Souls-likes, but it's not 100% identical. What do I mean? For starters, the combat focuses on parrying as opposed to dodging and rolling. Now, in my opinion, this is an amazing development, and I honestly wish more games would do this. So less dodging, blocking, fewer iframes, more reaction from the player in the form of parrying. Because dodging by itself doesn't give you an inherent advantage. On the other hand, parrying can often lead to interesting situations where you gain the advantage because you parried. Metal Gear Rising has a similar thing going on. Another area where it diverges is the absence of stamina. In Sekiro, you can run, attack, whatever you want to do, jump around as much as you want without worrying about stamina, because stamina is simply not a thing. So again, in my opinion, this is a pro. It is amazing. I think that the idea of stamina is a bit outdated at this point, and the way they went about it is, in my opinion, preferable. You take very little fall damage. In fact, I can't even recall when I took fall damage. I know I took fall damage like once or twice, but it's very rare that you will take fall damage. This is, again, by design, and it is a design that I greatly appreciate. This is, of course, opposed to regular Souls-likes, where you just have lethal damage after a certain height. Stealth is a main component of Sekiro. After all, you are playing as a shinobi, a ninja. And it is actually viable. It's not just a thing you do to get an early backstab or whatever. You can take out an entire group of enemies in full stealth. Again, to me, that is great. Because stealth always feels like an afterthought in these games. It's like, okay, you can approach the enemy without the enemy noticing you, and that's about it. Now, I mentioned that Sekiro... Actually, no, I didn't mention that Sekiro only has one arm, but he does have one arm. And the other arm is a prosthetic tool. The prosthetic tool is highly customizable. The things you can put on the prosthetic tool are also upgradable. It has many tools, and it just adds a new dimension to combat. So it's not quite magic, but it's also not just, say, a gun. You know, it's different. It has a flamethrower, it has fireworks, an umbrella. The umbrella is better than it sounds, trust me. You know, it has a ton of stuff, and it's just a whole different way to play a game. And of course, Sekiro himself has many active and passive abilities that you can unlock, and of course, they're cool as hell. Now, another thing that I really liked in Sekiro, which is unfortunately absent from many games, is that you have a jump button. Moreover, the jump button isn't just a way to get around, it actually ties in to combat. There's a specific type of counter you can do where you jump and then you hit someone, so you jump on someone, effectively. You get a double jump. And that's, you know, better than just having jumping as an action. I still like the fact that they added jumping, because I feel like too many games just left out jumping to make it easier to design maps. Sekiro, I think, shows that you can have decent map design while still having a jump button. And that, no, you don't need to get rid of the jump button, you just need to get better at map design. There's also swimming, which ties into stealth, so enemies are less likely to spot you if you're in the water. Swimming, yet another action that is unfortunately absent from many action games nowadays. There's diving, yet another action that's unfortunately missing a lot. From a lot of action games. Diving also features underwater combat. I'll get to that in a moment, in a few minutes. And perhaps another great thing, Sekiro actually has a pause button. Not the usual open a menu and everything is still going on in the background that From Software does in Dark Souls, but an actual pause button. You press the button, the game is paused, everything stops. So, you know, that was interesting to see, and unfortunately they didn't do that with Elden Ring, but, you know, maybe they'll do it for their next game. Here's hoping. Now let's get to the neutrals. Sekiro is the first game by From Software, at least the first one that I know of, where there are actual consequences for constantly dying and resurrecting. Now, every time you die, you have a little resurrection dot. If you use it, nothing happens. Well, you're resurrected, but nothing bad happens. If you run out of dots... Oh, right, you can also unlock 2 additional dots as you go along. Now, if you run out of dots, or if the dots are blocked, keep in mind that after every resurrection the dots get blocked until you acquire the resurrection energy, if you will. Then there's a chance that people will get sick. In addition to that, your money is halved every time you die. This is yet another point where Sekiro diverges from typical Souls-like game design. Because in other Souls-likes, sorry, your money or money equivalent is just dropped wherever you die, and then you go and pick it up. In Sekiro, it's just halved immediately. The experience required to reach the next level is also halved. Some people say this is a bit too harsh. Honestly, I'm of two minds about this. On the one hand, I can see that, it is a bit too harsh. On the other hand, it fits with the motif of Sekiro in general, which is that you cannot overlevel. You can't just overpower the boss. You have to understand the boss, or the enemy, or whatever is giving you trouble. You have to understand it, and you have to get better at playing the game. Not just using overpowered stuff and then beating the enemy with sheer strength. Now, there's a small chance that your money and experience won't be halved, but that depends on the number of people who are sick. The fewer people that are sick, the higher the chance, up to 30%. At least that's the highest I've seen it go. I don't think there's a way to increase it further. And finally, when people get sick, their quest lines, if any, are put on hold until you cure them using a dragon tear or something like that. It's an item that you use at a shrine, and sorry, it's not a shrine, it's like a little statue. It's an idol, that's it. So you use it there and it immediately cures everybody who's sick. No exceptions. Thing is, these items are limited, of course. So you shouldn't immediately use it just because you're having trouble with a specific boss. The characters will not actually die. I'm not sure if I would want them to. I think that might be a bit too much. So, if you're not sure if you'll be able to beat the boss or the enemy or whatever, or if you just want to preserve the item until a bit further ahead, you can do that. There's no harm in it, except of course that you can't advance their quests if they have any. Finally, we get to my least favorite section, the cons. This is always my least favorite section because I prefer ranting on about the things that I like about games rather than the things that I don't like about them. Well, let's start with the biggest missed opportunity, in my opinion. Some enemies in Sekiro are immortal. You can kill them, but they just come back again and again. So how do you kill them? Well, you have a cool red sword that actually finishes off the source of their immortality. It is specifically designed to kill immortals. So you kill them once, or defeat them once, then you stab them with this sword, bada bing, bada boom, they're dead. For good. The issue here is that the sword can only be used in this fashion. Oh no, wait, sorry. You also have an ability that uses the sword, but I'll get to those abilities in a moment. This is the biggest missed opportunity in the game, in my opinion. I mean, you have a cool sword that has like red blood fire or something. I don't even know how to describe it. Just look, it's awesome. And then you just have an ability that allows you to draw it, and you occasionally get to kill an immortal enemy with it. And that's it. That's all you get to do with it. You never get to use it as your main weapon. That's a big missed opportunity, in my opinion. There's also a mechanic, it's a status effect really, called Terror. Now, Terror builds up even if you block the attack that causes Terror. It's a thing that ghost type enemies do. I think apparition type, I think that's the name. So you got your headless enemies, for instance, and they cause terror. The thing is, if terror fills up completely, you just die, period. I think you can't even resurrect, you're dead. Now, I'm not a fan of instant death mechanics. I think they're cheap. I don't think they reward good gameplay, especially in this case, because if you block, which is supposed to be the main form of avoiding damage and dealing with enemies, it still builds up. So what is the point of this, you know? Now, I mentioned before that the sword has that you have an active ability that allows you to use the cool red flaming sword. Now, prosthetic tools also have an issue with their usage that is the same as the sword. And it is that they require spirit emblems. What are spirit emblems? Spirit emblems are these little human-shaped paper cutouts. And so some abilities and all prosthetic tools require spirit emblems to use. Why? I mean, I get, for example, the flamethrower, you know? Sure, you can say that you're burning the spirit emblems, or, I don't know, maybe something a bit more magical. But the shuriken, I mean, they are literal little throwing stars. They're made of metal. Why would they require spirit emblems? You know? Another issue is that you can only have one ability equipped at any time. I'm not sure if this is an issue with the limitations of controllers or just a game design choice. Either way, I don't like it, so it's here in the cons. Now, as I mentioned very early on in the pros, I love that the combat focuses on parrying instead of dodging, rolling, whatever. However, later enemies, actually even an early one, the Blazing Bull, they focus more on dealing small amounts of damage, chip damage, kind of, and then breaking the posture, which is, in my opinion, a deviation from the posture mechanic. Sure, you deal damage because they recover their posture too quickly, and the more damage they are, the more slowly their posture recovers. But I feel like they could have just made it so their posture bars were bigger, instead of giving them more recovery, and then forcing you to just kill them by 1,000 cuts, literally. But, you know, that's just my opinion. The Blazing Bull in particular is a very, very good example of this, because, to my knowledge, its posture cannot be broken. You really do have to kill it by 1,000 cuts. You just attack when you can, and eventually its HP will go down, and you kill it, and that's it. You cannot break its posture, as far as I know. Now, I also mentioned there's diving. Well, you need an item to dive. There's no oxygen bar. Once you have the item, you just breathe underwater or something. You just have unlimited oxygen. I think this is a missed opportunity. I would have preferred maybe just having diving from the beginning, but with an oxygen bar, and then you get the magical item or whatever. I think it would have been better, but, you know, that's not the way it works. I also mentioned underwater combat. Now, although it is cool, technically, it is also extremely basic. I mean, it's cool in concept, you know, fighting underwater. But in practice, you just attack, dodge, repeat. That's it. There's really no room for anything else, because you have 2 attacks. They're like a little corkscrew thingy, so you just swim really fast forward with your sword in front of you, and you attack whatever is immediately in front of you with a simple slash. And that's it. Those are the 2 attacks that you can do, unless I'm missing some. Well, I didn't find any, so those are the only 2 attacks that I know of. Finally, we get to the final score, no pun intended. It was extremely difficult for me to give Sekiro a final score, because on the one hand, although you only really have 1 weapon, the game is just so finely tuned. I really can't understate how much work, or at least how much work it appears that went into the combat and everything. Just you have 1 weapon, but it works so well. You really don't feel the need for something else, because everything was thought of thoroughly when it comes to the weapon. Everything was finely honed to a point. It was polished beyond belief. On the other hand, I mean, you have the spirit emblems to use abilities, of all things. I mean, why would you need a spirit emblem to swing a sword, you know? You can only equip 1 ability at a time. You can't use the cool red sword. The posture mechanic is abandoned for most bosses. Most is a bit of an exaggeration. For many bosses, posture mechanic is abandoned, might be a big word. It's ignored in favor of just death by 1,000 cuts. And but yet again, you know, there's no stamina, there's no fall damage. The fact that you can even that most of the combat is based on parrying is really cool. So, you know, I really struggled with this. But in the end, I have to give Sekiro a final score of 8 out of 10. I wanted to go to 8.5 out of 10, but I just feel like the terror mechanic is a cheap shot. You know, and any instant death mechanic is a cheap shot, but this one in particular just sucks. And the fact that the posture mechanic is essentially abandoned, and that you have to deal very small amounts of damage to a boss in order to actually get the posture break, is just those 2 things are just terrible. Oh, and of course the spirit emblems. So with those 3 things, I can even excuse the sword not being used more often, or the game not letting you use the sword more often. But the other 3 things, I don't know, I just can't excuse that. So yeah, in the end, 8 out of 10. I wish I could give it an 8.5 out of 10, even a 9 out of 10. But, you know, no game is perfect. And although this one was polished to hell and back, there are still some things that they really should have thought of better, at least in my opinion, and so it only gets an 8 out of 10 for me. So that was my Sekiro review. The next review on the backlog is Ni no Kuni 2: The Revenant Kingdom. It's a great game if you haven't tried it. So look forward to that. As always, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and I will see you again next time.